Hello friends, this is Cara-Renee with B.Reborn Art and Healing. Today I'm working on my Sunday's Art of Truth, and I'm going to be using a 12 by 12 MDF board, and these are some of the other supplies that I'll be using. I'm going to try this weathered wood Crackle Medium from Deco Art, as well as a couple of craft paints also from Deco Art, and then that golden sap green, and these are some of the stencils. And again, all of the supplies will be listed on my blog. And you can find my blog at B.Rebornart.com, and that will be listed in the video description. This particular printable I got from a place called Design Bundles, and I'll be sure to link them also over on my blog. So I'm going to be applying just some scraps of collage paper from Sean Petit collage packs. These did not end up showing at all and really didn't do what I had expected them to do. I was kind of trying to do a background similar to what I saw Sean Petit do on her Sunday's Art of Truth. I just really love the simplicity of the background. This ended up turning out way different, but I am absolutely in love with it. It was very different from what I normally create, and I was really pleased with how it turned out. So again, these papers don't end up really having any impact on the piece, and they didn't really have any meaning for me in particular in terms of there was no inspiration behind it, so I was just trying something different and new. I'll be using the Sean Petit stencil. This is the large, I believe it's a 12 by 16 stencil, and I'll be using that word Soulful at the bottom. And here I'm just marking off my panel or my MDF board for that bottom section. And here I'm using, I'm sorry, I must have cut something out unexpectedly there. I'm using the Sean Petit stencil to just create some background texture on the piece, on the top half, or the top portion, excuse me. And then I'll be coming in with the Lace Stencil on the bottom section. And you saw a flash of that TCW stencil there, which I was considering using on the bottom, but then I did end up reaching for my favorite stencil of Sean's, which is the Lace Stencil. So you're going to see me use that here in just a moment. I did make sure this was nice and dry because I wanted to make sure that when I lay that other stencil down, I don't want to mess up the stencil design on the top part of the panel. And then here I'm just getting the Lace Stencil in place, and then I'll be drying that first section and then moving the stencil so that I can stencil the other side. And I'm just using heavy gesso to do this. I really love the effect of that, and it creates a subtle texture, which is really nice, and it just really grabs the paint and the other mediums that we use. And here I'm kind of playing around with how can I continue that pattern. I was not able to continue it completely, but you would have to look really close to see that it wasn't a continuous pattern. So I'm hoping to look in her shop and see if this one has gone to the 12 by 16 size yet. If it has, I'm going to definitely grab it up because, again, it's one of my favorite stencils. So just finishing up with that heavy gesso on the stencil design here. Trying a couple of new things here. I'm using just regular craft acrylic paint from Deco Art in light buttermilk and a cranberry color. I believe it was called Berry Cobbler, and it was just absolutely gorgeous. And so I really liked the various designs on this stencil, so I did want to use it. So I decided I would use the dot part of it and just put some dots here and there around the top part of the MDF board. And I have to say I really am in love with using MDF board. This was so nice to work on. Very, very easy. It's very heavy. Which is unfortunate, but I think it'll be okay. So, but it was really enjoyable. So I'm really pleased with the purchase and the investment in that. So, and here I'm just turning that over so that I can get a little bit of those dots at the top without touching the wet stenciling that's on the other side. I just did make sure that that was all nice and dry before I move on. And I'm going to be using the weathered wood. That's the Crackle Medium on that bottom section. And at this point, I wasn't entirely sure what all I was going to do. I was just kind of going with the flow. And I just got out my little magnifying reader because the print on this bottle was so small. I could not read the instructions. So I do that a couple of times because I obviously didn't read it well enough the first time, but that's okay. So I'm using my sap green hue. This is golden acrylic. It's just regular golden acrylic paint. It's not heavy body, but it's not fluid either. So sap green hue is one of my favorite colors. So I'm just coating the bottom section of the MDF board with that. And then I do have to look at the instructions again because I wasn't sure on the Crackle Medium if this needed to be completely dry or just tacky or what. I ended up doing my own thing on the whole process. So reading the directions really wasn't necessary in this case because I was just really experimenting. I wanted to see what kind of results I would get. I let it dry a bit, but I did not let it completely dry. And I went ahead here and added a layer of the Crackle Medium on the green part of the MDF board there on the bottom. And there's the Crackle, this Crackle. I don't know if it's called Crackle Medium or something else, but again, I'll be sure to link that over on my blog in the supply list. So I'm just applying that everywhere on that green section. I did let this dry a bit more, and it's just amazing. As soon as I put the contrasting color on top of it, the cracks were immediate. It was so rewarding to have kind of an instant effect there. And so again, that is not completely dry. It's fairly tacky still, but I decided I was going to go in with the light buttermilk Deco Art premium paint. Or I don't believe it's premium, it's just Deco Art paint. Again, that will be listed in the supply list. So just giving an overall coat on the bottom section of the MDF board here. And I love how it crackled. You'll see in a moment how it crackled, but it also shows a lot of that lace pattern stencil, which was really gorgeous. It's not really identifiable in the final piece as far as like looking at it and going, oh, she used the lace stencil. You wouldn't know, but the texture is definitely visible and was really beautiful. So as you can see there, it's already starting to crack. Which is just super fast, and I just love it. It created some pretty large cracks. So just doing a quick heat set there just to make sure it's nice and dry, and there you can see more cracks. I really loved the effect. Back in the day when I just did kind of everyday kind of crafts, I did a lot of crackling kinds of things on frames and boxes and things like that, but I haven't used it in my more kind of professional creative process. So, and here I'm just coming in with a little bit of alcohol on my rag and wiping back some of that paint. And I really love how it was really kind of unexpected. I really didn't know what it was going to do or what I was going to be left with. I was just kind of going with it and experimenting, and I love how it turned out. Here, it wouldn't have been enough to just leave it like this, I don't think, and so I am going to go in with an acrylic ink, but there you can see the texture of that lace. It's just beautiful. So I'm using the Liquitex transparent, I believe it was the transparent raw umber, and I'm just going to apply that all over the bottom section there. I spray it with some water, and then I also use my finger eventually here to get it to move around. So, and then I do dab a lot of it up because I really just wanted it to settle into all of that texture, which it did absolutely beautifully. It was just gorgeous. And they're just dabbing it up just a bit, just leaving remnants. I want to be able to see that cream color. I want to be able to see the green and also that kind of grungy look of the raw umber. I really loved it. And there's just a close-up of that. Really beautiful. I had a lot of fun on this piece. I kind of had a plan, but not a real solid plan. I just knew that I wanted to try this particular kind of split canvas kind of idea and see what I could create that would be different than what is my normal. So, and then here I'm going to go in. You're going to see me really improvise and have to self-correct because I came in with this light buttermilk acrylic paint. This is the Deco Art paint. And I gave a coat to the entire surface. And I do a similar process where I go in with the Crackle Medium also, and then with the Berry Cobbler color, that really pinkish color. And my technique did not work. And you're going to see that I pretty much wipe it all off and I have to start over. But it turned out really good. I was really happy with it, even though that was kind of an unexpected turn in events, but it was all right. Oh, I guess I came in with the Berry Cobbler before I did the Crackle Medium. And that might have been where my error was. I'm not really sure. Not really sure what I was thinking here. And because the light buttermilk paint is still wet, it did lighten that red up, which might have been at the time what I was going for. I can't quite remember what my thought process was, and here, so I'm starting to wipe it back with just a baby wipe, and it wasn't really doing what I wanted. So I came in with, that was the alcohol. Then I came in with the baby wipe, and as you can see, it's pretty much taking everything off. And so I just kept rubbing and rubbing until it got to this point, and I'm like, okay, I gotta do something different. So I decided to come in just with a straight up Berry Cobbler color here and do a similar technique as I had done on the bottom section. So I'm applying a layer of that Berry Cobbler and then the Crackle Medium and then a coat of the light buttermilk and allowing that to really do some crackle. You're going to see here in a moment that I did have some spots that had quite a bit of a thick layer of the crackle and it stayed really wet, and so it ends up pulling up some of it. But again, that just added to the really rustic kind of old look of this panel. So I was really happy with it. I wasn't disappointed with that at all. I just kind of just kept going with it and to see where it was going to lead me. And I picked the Berry Cobbler because it is actually the same. And there's where you can see I was touching that with my finger, which is where there was too much of that Crackle Medium and it was super wet. And it actually was pulling up all the layers and making kind of a gooey, sticky mess there. But again, it worked out fine in the end. But anyway, I chose the Berry Cobbler because it is actually the same color as the darkest tone in the rose bouquet that I'm putting on the top. So that was why I picked that color, and I really, really love it. I think it turned out really nice, and it was a good complement to my focal image, which is the floral bouquet. So there you can see where I've got some of that Berry Cobbler came up more than other places. And here I'm coming in with some alcohol and it really wasn't doing much at all. But I kept trying. I wanted to see more of that Berry Cobbler color. And I was really struggling with getting that to happen. But that was kind of the final look, and I thought it was just fine. And I do come in again with the raw umber transparent Liquitex ink. And so I went ahead and spritzed my water on the top section there and then sprayed it again with the water and then kind of let it run a bit. And I believe that I did go in with my finger again with trying to get that that ink and that pigment to move around. But I look at that flow. It's so awesome. I love it. What I really wanted here, again, just like the bottom, I wanted that brown to settle into the texture. And it did. It added to the piece. It didn't overwhelm it. And I thought it was just perfect. And I felt like this piece had a little bit more contrast than what I normally end up achieving. So it worked out. I learned something. So now I'm just going to come in with that ink again and just kind of put it in more specific places so I can get a little bit of a darker result where I want it. Because I didn't want it to be super white. I definitely wanted it to have that grungy look. And I think that that was definitely achieved by using this transparent ink. A raw umber is one of my favorite colors, and the transparent version of it in the ink is just gorgeous. And so here I just made sure that that was nice and dry before I can consider moving on to the next step. Just love that really grungy texture. You can see some of the dots, although I did lose quite a bit of that. So I'm going to come in with my Crafter's Workshop stencil again, and pretty much in the exact areas, or the general area, of where I had already stenciled that. But this time I'm coming in with the Berry Cobbler paint and just adding some of that color as an accent. And I really feel like it added to the piece and was just a really nice touch. And then just one more place over here. I do end up coming down into the bottom section of the MDF board and putting some there. I'm thinking with my fingers. I find that I do that quite a bit. But I'm going to apply some of that that Berry Cobbler around the edges on the bottom, because I really felt like it needed that to tie the top and the bottom together. So that's what you're seeing me do there. And I do come all the way across that kind of that seam or that breaking point on the bottom section. I did end up wiping some of that off. It seemed a little bit too distinct, and so I do lift some of that off, just leaving a hint of that berry color. It's a really deep and rich color. And then off camera, I must have forgotten to turn the camera back on, but I kind of did the opposite, where I wanted to pull in some of that sap green up into the top. And so I just used my finger and that Liquitex, I don't remember what paint it is, the sap green hue, and went just here and there on the top of the MDF board also. And then here I'm just adhering my bouquet with my Liquitex matte medium. And then I have to tell you a secret. So after I was completely done with this, I didn't like the shading. It had made the flowers really dirty, and it had basically took a lot of the color out of the flowers in the very end off camera. And so I did come in, I cut that image out again, and I came in and put another one on top of it. But before I did that, I went ahead and added some shading on the MDF board where I knew those flowers were going to go, and it turned out really good. I was really struggling with the shading, so it was a really good solution for me. Shading is probably one of the hardest things for me, especially if I'm using a floral, because I find that it grunges up the image so much that I just don't like it. So I need to figure out my own way of doing that shading, something that I like. I even tried the Stabilo All pencil, and I don't care for that either. So I just need to keep practicing until I figure out what works for me. So in the end, what I did is I came in with some Distress ink, just with a blending brush, and I just kind of applied it to the substrate. And then I also applied it to the edges of the flowers just to create a little bit of shade and then I didn't have to use any charcoal pencil. So that's another option for creating your shading. So here I'm coming in with Sean Petite stencil and using this word soulful, as I mentioned before. And that is the subject matter of the Sunday's Art of Truth that you can read about on the blog. I'm going to be writing about what it means to be soulful. And it seems especially meaningful in these times when we can get really anxious and hyped up about all that is going on in our world. And it's a very purposeful thing to sit and be still and be soulful. And so I'll be talking about that in my Sunday's Art of Truth blog. And you can check that out on my blog again at B.Reborn Art and Healing. Just look for the blog post entitled Soulful, Sunday's Art of Truth Soulful, and that will be dated, I believe, October the 11th. So the last thing I'm doing here is coming in with my Penny Black script stamp, one of my favorites, and just doing some stamping with black archival ink around the piece. I really love the look of script, especially on something that I want to look very vintage, and it was really a great finishing touch on this piece. So I did go here and there. I was careful to not get it on the flowers. And so that's where you can see me kind of bending the stencil so that I can control where that ink is actually going. And then off camera, I do come in and do all of my shading around the outside edges of the MDF board, as well as connecting the letters in the word soulful, just to make them look a little bit less stenciled. So there's just a close-up of the whole project. And again, the shading is done after the fact, and you can check that out in the still photos. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that you'll head on over to my blog and read the Sunday's Art of Truth. I hope that you will be blessed. I hope that you enjoyed the video and the process. Thank you for sitting with me and learning with me, and take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.